Woo! Alrighty, what is going on, everybody? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is DKEN, and welcome to my incredible podcast. Now, before we commence this episode, do not forget to smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, share this with your boys and your fat ass families. Follow me on Instagram, smash that bell notification button, and of course, as always, enjoy. Now let's get started. Our top story for today shall be Derek Chauvin was found guilty and convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter for the death of George Floyd. Literally, I shall repeat that again, found guilty and finally convicted of these crimes. Now, obviously, he lost more than his badge and his sidearm. He has been sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison, and he shall rot behind bars until he serves his sentence in full. Okay? No parole, no reduction of his sentence. I mean, if that ever happens, I will be fucking surprised, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, to everyone that is listening in to this and watching this, you have a God-given right to voice your opinions down on the comment section below this video. Remember, George Floyd was murdered back in May 25 of 2020, okay? During that day, the officers responded to a situation that occurred back in the Cup Foods convenience store over in Minneapolis, okay? Minnesota. An employee of that store reported to the authorities that Mr. Floyd was attempting to use counterfeit money in order to purchase cigarettes, okay? He had a counterfeit $20 bill. Now keep this in mind. If I was the officer that were to respond to a situation like this, I would have just issued a summons or like a ticket to the suspect and just left him there saying, "Sir, this shall be your court date. Please present yourself to us at this date and time, and you have a good day, sir. Peace out." That's what I would have done, because think about it. One, the offense that Mr. Floyd committed was absolutely 100% not violent. I repeat, not violent. So this L is certainly going to go to Derek Chauvin. This leads to point number 2. Because that Mr. Floyd's offense was considered a misdemeanor, not a felony, he did not deserve to be arrested for that. Of course, I will never, and I mean ever, forget that the whole country literally descended into absolute chaos. I have not forgotten about the lootings that have occurred during those times, okay? Lootings all over the big cities across this nation, such as Santa Monica, Minneapolis, especially New York City, LA, Chicago, like everywhere, okay? We have all seen the videos. Some of these folks literally took it up to the next level where they started burning down businesses, okay? A lot of them committed arson. Most of these thieves were even sprinting in through the stores and no shit, taking everything off the counter and literally just taking off in getaway vehicles, okay? Pretty much all of these shoplifters had masks on because of COVID, so not a single employee of any of those looted businesses were able to identify any of the suspects, okay? And I'm sure that the local police departments had stacks of case files that were so big, it was just as tall as the Empire State Building, okay? Y'all could say that I'm exaggerating just a bit, but I'm certain that y'all get my point. I'll also say this. The lootings that occurred back in NYC, which is where I'm from, were even worse than the lootings that happened in the other locations. I mean, in my opinion. Even up to this day, all sorts of businesses are afraid that their establishments will become targets of looters. You don't believe me? Watch these videos.
An I-team investigation. A year ago this month, parts of the city were rocked by rioting and looting, stores from the Bronx to Midtown to Soho, taking advantage of the George Floyd protest and the pandemic. Now, the NYPD did make hundreds of arrests, but more than a year later, a great majority of the criminal cases against suspected looters have simply been dropped.
The NYPD and mayor were blasted for the handling or mishandling of the mobs that ransacked parts of the city.
Free vote!
A year ago, parts of the city were out of control. Crowds were seen smashing storefront after storefront. The mayhem continued night after night. At one point, there was even a so-called looting dance party on the streets of Soho. Many were caught on tape, some with faces visible. Even posted live their own videos of their actions those nights. Police far outnumbered and seemingly unprepared. but many arrests were made in Manhattan and along some commercial streets in the Bronx. Videos show how numerous locally owned Bronx stores were ransacked. 118 arrests were made in the Bronx during the worst of the looting. In Manhattan, NYPD data we reviewed shows there were 485 arrests. 222 cases later dropped. There are 73 convictions, many for lesser counts like trespassing. Another 40 cases sent to family court, and 128 remain open.
That's not justice. That's selective enforcement. If they are so overworked that they can't handle the mission that they're hired for, then maybe they should find another line of work.
About 80 people wearing masks rushed into a Nordstrom's outside of San Francisco, stealing whatever they could before rushing out of the store. Crime comes one day after a group of looters went into a Louis Vuitton store in San Francisco, grabbed valuables from inside, and took off.
Dozens of Boston businesses were left in ruins, windows smashed out, fires were set in some areas, and stores were looted.
I kept checking, and the last time I checked, they were in the store.
As looters ransacked his family store Sunday night.
By the time we got here, this here was the way you see it.
He says it'll take at least a month and a half to fix the damage before they can reopen.
The death of George Floyd triggered a social uprising, people taking to the streets in peaceful protest. Others, though, took it as an opportunity to sow chaos.
They broke through the glass and then came through.
Our cameras were here the days that followed, showing the destruction they left behind at Table Art. Peaceful protests demanding social justice after the death of George Floyd, and in areas like this, opportunists moved in to destroy and loot. The day his Moscot eyewear shop on Melrose was broken into and looted. Piles and piles of glasses and frames torn from ravaged glass showcases, tossed on the floor, graffiti everywhere.
So check this out. This was one of the golden key reasons as to why I chose to relocate to the West Coast, because this was too much for me to take in. By the way, for those of you that worked in any of those businesses, I just want all of you to know that my heart bled for you from start to finish. My heart bled for all of you that had to endure this kind of treatment. Needless to say, these are very difficult times that we are living in right now. However, one way or another, we're going to have to find a way to get past through this and go back to the way things were. And when I say this, I mean back to the times before we had this damn virus. And I understand that's going to take a long time, but trust me, as long as we work on this, perhaps someday this virus will go away for good, okay? I need you to trust me on this one, all right? Now, getting back to Derek Chauvin, what he did was most certainly unacceptable. If I was him, I would have given the guy a summons, like I said earlier. I would never have taken him down to the deck and placed my knee on top of his neck. Because when you do something like that, you cut off his circulation. He will have difficulty breathing. And speaking of breathing, I do recall that Mr. Floyd said countless times, "I can't breathe." Don't forget, this was the same thing that happened to Eric Garner. He was the first victim that said those three words, "I can't breathe." So when George Floyd passed away, when he said those three words, Derek Chauvin chose to disregard Mr. Floyd's words. He chose to disregard the fact that he had difficulty breathing. Like he did not even administer CPR. He didn't even administer CPR to Mr. Floyd. Like he did nothing to help the situation. Not even the other officers who responded to that situation did anything. They just chose to let it slide, and they did not do jack shit. Okay? After that incident, that's when the whole country just lost their sanity and everybody started to attack and loot businesses. Now, way back when Michael Brown got shot by an officer in Ferguson, Missouri, citizens all around the U.S. got furious when the authorities announced that they chose not to charge Darren Wilson, the officer that shot Michael Brown. During those times, don't get me wrong, many folks may have been furious about that, but what happened to George Floyd was taken to a completely different level. Like, I personally believe that Derek Chauvin deserves to die in prison. Like, I don't care what happens to him. I don't care if you give him the death penalty. I am absolutely certain that right before he got sentenced and transferred to the correctional facility that he's housed in right now, all of the inmates and all of the corrections officers have heard about what Chauvin did. Literally right before he got transferred to the corrections facility. You know, the staff and the inmates have most certainly heard about what he did right before he got sent to that conflicts, okay? Up to this day, I'm sure that the inmates and the guards, well, let's just say that they're having fun with Derek Chauvin right now as we speak. Like, I do not give 1, 2, or even 3 fucks as to what they are doing with Chauvin right now at this point. I don't care if he's getting sodomized, beaten down, or making him do exercises until he experiences a heart attack. Like, I don't care. Matter of fact, they shouldn't have sentenced him to prison. They should have given him the death penalty. And speaking about the death penalty, and I looked this up, capital punishment is utilized in the state of Missouri. Now, let me ask you this. Feel free to agree or disagree. In Chauvin's case, after he got found guilty of all charges brought forth to him, which one of you would want to bring back the firing squad? Or how about this? Who would have loved to have witnessed this scumbag getting hanged by the neck until he dies? I would, okay? I'm putting my hand up right now, and I'm saying that I would. I would have loved to have seen Derek Chauvin going through a public execution for everybody to watch, okay? Like I said before, feel free to voice your opinions down on the comments section below this video, okay? Here's the thing. I think I can take a guess as to why the court decided to not impose capital punishment against Derek Chauvin. The reason this was the case was because the judge did not have enough to meet the threshold of imposing the death penalty on Chauvin. That's what I think happened, and I'm sure the judge would have loved to have done that if that was in his available options, okay? Of course, let's not forget this. The other officers that were involved in that case ended up getting charged as well, but needless to say, their charges were nowhere near as bad as what Chauvin was charged for. They chose to just let George Floyd suffer and die alone. They did not even administer CPR, provide medical aid, they chose not to do anything. Those officers, in my personal opinion, are just as guilty as Chauvin. Like, how many of you are willing to agree with me on that one, okay? Aye or nay, hands up or hands down. Like, feel free to put down your answers on the comment section below this video, okay? Just give them a few years and that's it. And make sure that every single community remembers their names so that they do not get a job in the PD anymore, or even a security job that requires you to hold a non-lethal weapon at the very minimum, okay? I'm just saying. In conclusion, what can we learn from this? Well, here it is. For those of you that have an interest in pursuing a career in law enforcement, take my advice into consideration. Please, for the love of God, please do not place non-violent suspects in a headlock or place your knee on top of a suspect that has some sort of physical condition such as asthma or heart condition. That would be a bad fucking day for you, and that would be unprofessional, okay? Do not do that. Instead, if you find yourselves in a situation where you do not need to use lethal force, just give the guy a summons or a ticket and just let him go. You don't need to arrest him, okay? If the suspect is committing a nonviolent offense, I shall repeat this one more time. Please do not arrest him. Just give him a summons and let him go. Very simple. You do not need to complicate the situation. So, with all of that said, this concludes this episode of my incredible podcast. So thank you very much for watching. Do not forget to hook smash that like button. Subscribe to my channel. Share this with your boys and your families. Follow me on Instagram. Smash that bell notification button. And every single one of you, have a wonderful and blessed day. Peace out.